I think an important clarification, H-1B students don't, if an Indian student comes to the US, to get a job they don't need an H-1B visa. There's this thing in the US called OPT, optional practical training. We were worried that we were going to lose a lot of international students. That actually didn't happen. And so I think what's really going on is that for the top quality places, the international students have a global perspective. They understand what they'd be getting. It's probably the sort of second tier American universities that will suffer, at least in the short term. Although the new news, the H-1B news, that's a big deal. The real fear is not only American but global, which is that I never thought we would deglobalize in the way that the global economy has started to fracture. I never thought that skilled migration would become a big political issue as it now is in lots of countries. The imagined fear, I think, is the sort of physical safety side, supply-demand mismatch, which is what I think everyone sees. That's India, and that's the opportunity.
Hi. So, from the education bit, the most important factor right now for Indian students who are wanting to go to US to study, the important factor is H-1B visa. That has been something very important for students in India, especially when they were looking forward to working there, in order to pay off the loans as well. So, just wanted to have understanding of your point of view on the newest regulation on H-1B visa.
So just I think an important clarification, H-1B students don't, if an Indian student comes to the US, to get a job they don't need an H-1B visa. There's this thing in the US called OPT, optional practical training. We should check the title. But if it's a STEM degree, as all of the Marshall Business School degrees are, you get 3 years of work experience. But what we're concerned about is from a firm's perspective, the hassle factor of getting an Indian student into the US, into the workforce. The hassle factor has been going up for a while, visa interviews and all that kind of stuff. But now there's this financial entry barrier. But I suspect that the bigger American companies, which is where most students want to go, will amortize the cost, the $100,000 for them over a 6-year time. So the signal it sends obviously is a very, very worrying signal, and I understand why Indian students will be so concerned about. But the practical reality I think there'll be two practical realities. The job pathways into big firms won't be so affected. And the second thing is that the two of the or several of the big players in H-1B were Indian companies operating in the US. So that's probably a win, because the talent now will come back to India. So, I'm speaking for far too long, but my overall worry is, and this is true of many things coming out of the Trump administration, the signal that's sent is a very powerful signal, but then you unwrap it and the detail works out, and it's sort of less intimidating. But nonetheless, of course, the signal value is enormous and worrying. And for universities like USC, where international students are our lifeblood, and USC, like everywhere else, has been moving away from Chinese students and towards Indian students, we have to be concerned about that. So we're going to have to unpack it all for people, because otherwise, it's potentially a very big change to our business. Sorry, too long-winded, but.
When we're talking about this uncertainty among Indian students when they're visiting or going to USA for foreign education or abroad education, I wanted to understand if there is any impact on the numbers of admissions, especially the recent admission season that happened, or when the semester started. Do you see there is any impact?
I can tell you two things. So the first thing is, at the business school, we had a record, and I think it was true for USC at the undergraduate level, record Indian students coming in. I'll also tell you that we were concerned, not only from India, but for all international students, that what at the time I called the visa hassles, right? Could you get an interview? Could you get a student visa? We were worried that we were going to lose a lot of international students. That actually didn't happen. And so I think what's really going on is that for the top quality places, the international students have a global perspective. They understand what they'd be getting. It's probably the sort of second tier American universities that will suffer, at least in the short term. Although the new news, the H-1B news, that's a big deal. And I can tell you from a business model standpoint, I'm less concerned about undergraduate because it's a longer experience. You can amortize. The part of our educational system that is a bit more transactional is the one-year master's students, and for them now it's a much harder undertaking. Do I do this degree with all of this uncertainty about my employment prospects? So we'll have to think about that, and that's another reason to think more actively about offering graduate education outside the US, because it just might become a practical necessity.
I want to ask you about the students who still want to come to America, or they've always wanted to, and now they're just scared, right? So one is the H-1B scare, which you mentioned, but other is the cultural fear that that we will not be as welcomed as we thought we would be at one point.
So I have two reactions to that. The first one is that California is different.
Yeah.
Genuinely different demographically, right? So if you, as you know, if you walk down Truesdale Parkway in the middle of the day at USC, you don't feel like you're in some mythical white America in the 1950s.
Right.
And so California is different, and I actually think Southern California is even more cosmopolitan than the Bay Area. So that's the first point. Second point is, Indian Americans are so powerful today. Not only corporate CEOs, but the power of the Indian caucus in Congress is incredible, and people should feel comfort as a result of that. I mean, the success of Indian Americans is incredible, as I'm sure you know. So yeah, the headlines are here. There's a lot of the DC noise, but then there are these underlying things that are so powerful and so successful. And I just, back to the headline piece. Of course, people are affected by the headlines, but if we can help people just dig a little deeper into that, there are still so many good news stories out there.
So I'm rephrasing the question: what is the one real fear of the changed America for an Indian student, and what is the one imagined fear of the new American campus for an Indian student?
I think the real fear is not only American but global, which is that I never thought we would deglobalize in the way that the global economy has started to fracture. I never thought that skilled migration would become a big political issue as it now is in lots of countries. The imagined fear, I think, is the sort of physical safety side. So tell an LA story. I'm sure the LA riots in the summer were a big global story, and people would say, "Oh my God!" We would all get calls. Are you safe in LA? And what you would say is, "It's 2 blocks in downtown LA, and this is the most sprawling city in the world. This has no impact on me." But because of the power of the images, right, all of those things it was the same with the fires in LA in January, which were tragic, but they were in 2 small parts of the city, right? The LA wasn't burning down. It was the Palisades and Altadena. So I think this is the power of media, but also the risk of media, that the images are so powerful that, of course, you have an incentive to blow them, not an incentive. Recipients feel that. It's so visceral, and you think, oh my God. But again, putting that in context, I think, is very important.
I mean, I would just say one thing to add is from my perspective, I teach 2 classes at USC, and I would think more than 50% of the students in each of my classes are from India. And what I observe on a day-to-day basis is actually not this conversation. It's actually what you would imagine the conversation to have been in any of the previous 3 to 5 years. It's like, hey, I'm here, I'm learning, here's my interest, here's my skills. How can you help me navigate from like where my trajectory has been to what the next step is? Is it a job in this sector or that sector? How do I position myself? And it's the kinds of concerns and issues that you would have always heard. And I would think 99% of every question that has been asked of me is really aimed at that. It's not to say that other concerns that they may have don't exist or are not real. It's not the temperature, at least in of the students.
So they aren't as afraid as we think they are.
In my experience in my 2 classrooms, it's not the discourse that I experienced.
And they're as welcomed by their student.
Extremely so, and I feel like USC is an extraordinarily diverse.
USC is different. I mean, because as you said, Southern California is different, of course. But so what if you can? What does the Indian student bring to the campus? I mean, is there anything distinct or unique that being welcoming and encouraging Indian students to come into campus? What does that mean?
Yeah, I
for
mean,
the campus?
so I spend a lot of time in East Asia as well as in South Asia, and the thing that's true of all Asian students is just the underlying quality, the talent quality plus the commitment to hard work is amazing. The distinctive feature of Indians as opposed to East Asians is just the sort of natural, gregarious, charismatic nature of this country, right? I mean, Indians love to engage and debate, and that makes them, I think that's why they've been so successful in politics in the US, but it probably also has the same effect on campus. So from my perspective, it's a win-win, right? That the underlying quality, you have no doubt about that. And then you get people who are natural leaders. And that's what in business schools, that's what you want. You want that combination.
And what about the cost? Because the cost of the education, when I was there, I spent, I don't know, I think of how much was in dollars now, but about, somewhere around $1 crore is what it cost me to get myself through college.
Yeah.
Which is how many dollars?
Right now,
Graduate.
$125,000.
How much is that?
$125,000.
Yeah,
So
that's
now
how much
it's
it cost me to go through.
now it's closer, fully loaded, including living expenses and everything else. It's closer to $500,000.
It's $500,000.
Yeah.
And the rupee when I was in college was at 40
Yeah.
rupees a dollar. Now
Yeah.
it's at 88. So
So the exchange rate part obviously is enormous, and the dollar's depreciating against most currencies, but not against the
Not
rupee.
yet.
Yeah,
we're holding on. We're
yeah,
holding on, but also.
But this is back to changing model. We know that more scholarships are essential for international students and Indian students, and it would also help us diversify the talent base in India. It wouldn't be an ability to pay as the first filter if we could have more scholarships.
Right.
And again, based on the Penn experience, you can use Indian not-for-profit status as a way to attract scholarship dollars, which will then help a broader cross-section of the personality of the population be able to afford time in the US. So that's another win-win possibility
That's
for
very
us.
So just to play that out for us, you want to raise foundation funding from India
For Indian students.
for Indian students who are going to be, sitting in America in an American campus.
Yes, but I mean that's the first version. But again, if as I think has to happen, certainly a university like USC needs to not only be global in the sense of attracting global students, but operate more, give all of our students opportunities to be here, potentially offer non-degree programs, potentially degree programs in India. That's just that'll be the next iteration. And of course, if we were to do anything in country in India, then I think that my sense, I'll give you a different example, Indonesia, which has different rules than India. So we have a fantastic alumni base in Indonesia, and they want to support the university, but they also want to support their country. So we've found that the way to generate philanthropic support is, again, win-win. It's good for us because we get higher quality students, but the donors know and feel that they're contributing to their country, right? The development of their country. And that's even in the Indonesian case, that's even without the tax incentives that exist in India.
So it's an interesting point that you mentioned on the NEP. Does the NEP make it easier for you guys to set up operations in India?
Yes, and it's interesting, maybe not surprising, that the two countries that have taken first advantage of that are my home country, Australia, and the UK. And I think that, I mean, the reason for that is that the financial position of those universities is much weaker than the big, strong American institutions. But I suspect that the US will be next, and it'll be places like NYU in New York and USC that already have big international footprints and big international student numbers, including Indians, that'll be more likely to be more involved here more quickly, right? But I do think we'll just be the leading edge of a change that's got to happen, because the underlying model of higher education, certainly elite higher education, is being challenged today in unprecedented ways. And we haven't even mentioned AI yet, right? And then you put AI on the top of all of that.
So about the offshore campuses, I had a follow-up question on it. There are many universities, foreign universities, which are setting up shops here in Mumbai itself. 5 universities are upcoming, and then there are more in India. So when students are planning to go to foreign education abroad, there is a lot of, about international exposure, the cultural exchange that will involve in that process. But when it comes to foreign universities setting up a shop here, do you think it is possible for the university to provide that kind of environment to the student here in India? And do you see that will be kind of a challenge for those universities to maybe get students? Obviously from India they'll get, but then from other countries when they want to come to India, you think that will be a challenge for them?
Well, lots of questions there. Let me just make a high-level observation about the US. So I'm Australian. I went to the US for higher education. I think the implicit American model for a long time was everyone in the world wanted, if they could, to get to the United States, and everyone wanted to be as American as possible. That's clearly outmoded today, right? And so I think both culturally and economically, we need to go to the world more. So I celebrate that. I think it having more balance rather than this one-way traffic is the right way to go. I also think that there's a cultural dimension to that. We've been talking about at the business school at USC, we send a remarkable proportion of our students, degree students, on international experiences. They all want to go to Western Europe because they're familiar with it, they have vacations there, culture, history, all of that stuff. What I'd like to do is to be proactive in getting them into the leading emerging markets, right? And so India is the obvious place to focus now. But the challenges are high because, if you haven't been here, wow, it's so different. It's halfway around the world. It's not one flight, it's 2 flights, right? All of those things are a challenge. But I think the opportunity here is so great that if we can grease the wheels by having better access to more stuff here, it'll make that more possible.
Do you view like Germany as competition, Australia, UK, Canada? What do you view as competition to
No.
a great degree?
No, I mean, the one-word answer would be no. Then gets more complicated. I've spent a lot of time in my native Australia. I ran 2 business schools in Australia, so I have some experience there as well. And I am super impressed with, for example, the quality of Australian higher education It's not nearly as good as elite in the US, but per dollar, I think it's incredibly efficient. So I admire the system. But if you're playing in this, in the global elite, there's only a tiny number of people who can really be competitive there. But back to your first question, H1B, right? I mean, Canada looks like Canada in an employment sense looks like they have an incredible opportunity at the moment with the new H1B. That might flow through to universities, but it doesn't today. It certainly hasn't. Even though all the universities in Canada are public, so they have smaller funding base than the leading American private universities do. But they've got an opportunity. The UK, Oxford and Cambridge, obviously have global brand. They're competitors. But what you're seeing in India is a lot of the more regional universities in the UK now understand they've got maybe a global imperative, right? So they're the ones who want to operate here. It's a dynamic. But for me, I just think I think two core thoughts, right? One is the world's changing very rapidly, and it's not going to go back to where it was. So we've got to be thinking about the future.